In the dead of night, a princess lowers a rope from her palace window. Her husband's life depends on it. The king's soldiers are coming. She's the daughter of a king, and the wife of the man after God's own heart. But before this story ends, you'll discover a shocking truth about Michal, a woman who loved David more than anyone, yet ended up despising him. The palace of King Saul was a place of power, fear, and uneasy glory. Servants moved quickly through its echoing halls. Musicians played to calm the king's troubled spirit, and whispers of jealousy drifted through the corridors. In that palace lived Michal, Saul's younger daughter, a woman of beauty and strong mind, with the spark of courage that could only come from a heart that longed for something more than royal privilege. Stories of a young warrior named David, the shepherd who had slain the Philistine giant Goliath, had spread like wildfire through Israel. The people sang his name in the streets. Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. David had become a hero, and Michal's heart, though born into the world of kings, was captured by the simplicity and bravery of a shepherd boy. Unlike her father, who saw David as a threat, Michal saw something different. She saw a man whose strength came not from his sword, but from his faith in God. The scriptures say simply, Michal loved David. That line stands quietly in the Bible, yet it carries deep power because love, in those days of politics and power, was rarely pure. Saul noticed his daughter's affection and sought to use it to his advantage. He offered Michal's hand to David, but with a deadly condition. If David wanted to marry the princess, he must bring Saul 100 Philistine foreskins as a bride price. It was a task designed to kill him. But Saul underestimated both David's courage and Michal's place in his destiny. David went out to battle and returned not with 100, but with 200 trophies of victory. The people erupted in celebration, and Michal's joy overflowed. Against all odds, the shepherd had won the heart of the king's daughter. Their wedding was more than a union of love. It was a symbol of hope. For a moment, it seemed light had pierced through the storm clouds of Saul's jealousy. Michal became David's wife, and together they dreamed of a life guided by faith, not fear. Yet even in their joy, shadows lingered. Saul's eyes burned with envy whenever he saw David. The songs that once honored his victories now haunted him, and Michal, though wrapped in love, could feel the tension rise like thunder in the distance. There were days when she watched her father grip his spear tighter whenever David entered the room. Nights when the music meant to soothe the king's spirit turned into a weapon of hatred. Michal's heart trembled, for she knew what her father was capable of. Then one night, the storm finally broke. Messengers came, whispering of a deadly order. Saul had commanded David's death. Michal's heart pounded as she ran to warn her husband. "You must flee tonight," she said, "or tomorrow you will be killed." David hesitated. He didn't want to leave her, but Michal's eyes were filled with desperate love. "Go," she urged now. Quickly, she helped him climb through the window of her chamber and down the outer wall into the darkness. The future king of Israel fled into the night, his life saved by the woman who loved him. Then, with trembling hands, Michal placed a household idol in the bed, covered it with a blanket, and laid goat's hair at its head. When Saul's soldiers burst into the room, she told them David was ill. Her deception bought him time, but it also sealed her fate. When the lie was uncovered, Saul's fury knew no bounds. He demanded an explanation, and Michal, caught between loyalty to her father and love for her husband, replied, "He said to me, 'Let me go. Why should I kill you?'" Her words were a desperate shield, protecting herself from her father's wrath, but deep inside, her heart shattered. The man she loved was gone, hunted like an animal, and she, the princess of Israel, was left behind in a palace of rage. That night, Michal's courage saved David's life, but her reward was isolation. Caught in the cruel war between the man she adored and the father she feared, the moonlight that had shone on her act of love now revealed her loneliness. The same window through which David escaped became the symbol of her heartbreak, a moment frozen in time, where love triumphed for one night, but loss would rule the years to come. The palace that once echoed with music and laughter now felt like a prison. Since David's escape, Michal's chambers were filled with silence, no harp, no voice, no warmth. Her heart lingered at the window, where she last saw him disappear into the night. Each morning she prayed he was alive. Each night she feared a messenger would bring word of his death. King Saul, however, had no such affection left. His mind, clouded with bitterness and envy, viewed Michal as a reminder of the man who humiliated him. To Saul, his daughter's love had become rebellion. And so, in a cruel twist of vengeance, he took Michal and gave her to another man, Paltiel, son of Laish. It wasn't love. It was politics, a punishment meant to erase her bond with David. Paltiel was gentle, a man who treated her kindly, but Michal's heart remained far away in the wilderness with David, the outlaw king. Though years passed, her soul lived in two worlds, one of forced comfort and one of forgotten love. Meanwhile, beyond the palace walls, David's life was shaped by exile. He wandered through deserts and caves, gathering loyal followers, writing psalms of sorrow and trust. He married other women, Ahinoam, Abigail, but Michal's name was rarely spoken. The distance between them grew not just in miles, but in destiny. Then came the turning of the age. Saul and his sons fell in battle on Mount Gilboa. The once great king lay lifeless, and with him, the old order of Israel died. News spread across the land David was to be crowned king. For Michal, those words stirred a storm of emotion, grief for her father, confusion over her loyalty, and a faint flicker of hope. Could David, the man she once saved, remember her still? The answer came sooner than she expected. When David negotiated peace with Abner, the commander of Saul's army, he set one condition before uniting the kingdom. You shall not see my face unless you bring Michal, Saul's daughter, when you come. To Samuel 3:13. David wanted her back. Whether it was love, politics, or principle, only God knew. But for Michal, it meant being torn once more from the life she knew. Abner came to take her from Paltiel's house. The Bible paints the moment with heartbreaking simplicity. Her husband went with her, weeping behind her to Baram. To Samuel 3:16. Imagine that road. Michal walking ahead in silence, her garments brushing the dust, her face hidden beneath her veil. Behind her, Paltiel weeping openly, his steps slow and heavy. The soldiers urged him to turn back, but love pulled him forward until Abner turned and said, "Go back." And he did. The weeping faded, leaving only the sound of her footsteps toward a destiny she did not choose. When Michal arrived, the past and present collided. David, once the humble shepherd she loved, was now a king with wives, warriors, and a throne. She, once a princess of Saul's court, was now a woman scarred by years of separation, betrayal, and forced loyalty. Their reunion was not the romantic moment one might expect. The Bible records no embrace, no words of affection, only a return. David restored her place in his household, but not in his heart. Perhaps the years apart had changed them both. Perhaps the wounds of betrayal and ambition had built invisible walls between them. Whatever the reason, Michal's life with David no longer carried the warmth it once did. In the corridors of Jerusalem, she was seen but seldom heard. The man she once saved now led nations, and she once the woman he risked his life to win stood among others, her story fading into silence. But Michal's silence would not last forever. A day was coming when the Ark of God would enter the city with dancing, music, and joy, and on that day, her heart would finally speak again. And what it would say would change everything. The day her heart turned cold. Years had passed since Michal's return to David's house. She lived among his other wives, surrounded by royal splendor but starved of affection. David's days were filled with war councils, psalms of worship, and matters of kingship. Michal's days were filled with silence. Though she had been restored as his wife, something precious between them had died, the simplicity of love that once made them fearless. Then one morning, the sound of trumpets pierced the air of Jerusalem. The Ark of the Covenant, the sacred symbol of God's presence, was being brought into the city. It was a moment of divine joy. Israel had waited generations for this. David, overwhelmed by worship, danced before the Lord with all his might, wearing a simple linen ephod, stripped of royal formality. The streets shook with music, tambourines, and shouts of celebration. The king himself leapt and twirled in the presence of God, unashamed, his heart consumed with praise. But from a high window in the palace, Michal watched him. The man she once loved, her husband, her king, was dancing before servants and commoners, his royal robes cast aside, and something deep within her twisted. To Michal, who had grown up in Saul's house, dignity was everything. Kings were meant to be feared, not seen, rejoicing like peasants. She saw not worship but humiliation. Her father had ruled with pride and control. Now her husband ruled with humility and joy, and she could not understand it. The sight of David dancing and shouting before the Lord pierced her with shame. The fire of love that once burned for him turned to cold judgment. Scripture says, she despised him in her heart. As the procession ended, David returned to bless his household, his face radiant with joy. But the first person to meet him was Michal. Her words cut deeper than any sword. How the king of Israel distinguished himself today, she said with biting sarcasm, disrobing in the sight of the slave girls of his servants, as any vulgar fellow would. David's joy froze in that moment, but his face stood firm. He replied, "It was before the Lord, who chose me rather than your father or anyone from his house. I will celebrate before the Lord. I will become even more undignified than this, if it means honoring him." David turned away, leaving her words behind, but something final had broken between them. The story ends with a line that echoes like a judgment. And Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child to the day of her death. To Samuel 6:23, a short sentence, yet it tells of years of silence and emptiness that matched her heart. Michal's story is tragic not because she was wicked, but because she let bitterness drown her love. Once, she risked her life to save David. Now, she could no longer rejoice with him in God's presence. The same woman who lowered a rope from her window to save her husband's life now looked out that same window with contempt. It is the story of how love, when wounded and left unattended, can harden into pride. And pride, when left unchecked, can turn joy into jealousy and worship into scorn. Perhaps, deep within her, Michal never stopped longing for the man. She first knew the young shepherd who sang psalms in the night and whispered God's promises by her side. But kingship, politics, and pain had changed them both. Her father's pride lived on in her, and it slowly destroyed the joy she might have found again. The window that once symbolized courage now symbolized distance between her and David, between her and God. Her story closes not with triumph, but with tragedy. Yet even in her silence, Michal's life stands as a warning and a mirror. Love without humility becomes bitterness. Faith without surrender becomes pride. And when the heart grows cold, even joy can look foolish. The years passed, and the palace of King David grew grander, filled with the sounds of laughter, songs, and the cries of newborn princes. But one chamber remained silent, Michal's. She was still the king's wife in title, but her heart had long been shut away, just like her room. Servants passed her door softly, whispering about the queen who never smiled. The same woman who once risked her life to save David now sat watching from a window, distant, proud, and alone. The Bible never records another moment of intimacy or warmth between them. No reconciliation, no healing, just silence. It's as though Michal's story ended the day she mocked David's worship, the moment her pride rose higher than her humility before God. She had once loved the man chosen by God but could not love the God who chose him. That was her undoing. If we look deeper, Michal's life reveals a mirror to many hearts, those who once had passion, faith, and hope, but lost them through disappointment. She loved a hero but despised the worshiper. She admired David's strength in battle but could not understand his surrender before God. To Michal, dignity mattered more than devotion. To David, God's presence mattered more than reputation. That difference separated them forever. And so, while David's name echoed through eternity as a man after God's own heart, Michal faded into history as the woman who looked down from a window, the woman who could not rejoice. Yet her story still speaks powerfully today, because hidden in her fall is a truth about worship, pride, and love. Sometimes the test of our faith isn't in how we handle success, but how we handle disappointment. Michal couldn't bear the thought that God had chosen someone else, that her father's kingdom had fallen, that she was now part of another man's divine story. Instead of bowing before that truth, she resisted it, and in that resistance, her heart hardened. David danced because he saw the glory of God returning to Israel. Michal despised him because she could only see through the eyes of pride. One heart leapt toward heaven, the other stayed trapped behind a window, bitter, bound, and blind to grace. Her name may fade from Scripture's pages, but her lesson endures. Never let the wounds of yesterday rob you of the worship of today. Even the most painful past can be redeemed if the heart remains soft before God. But a heart that clings to pride will slowly close itself off from His blessings. Michal's life began with love and courage, but it ended in pride and loneliness. She had everything, beauty, royalty, and the love of a chosen man. Yet she lost it all because she could not let go of bitterness. And so, her window remains a symbol for generations, the place where worship meets pride, and where one choice can change everything. Stay till the very end of this video, because here's the powerful truth hidden in Michal's story. Sometimes, God removes us from certain stages not to punish us, but to show us what our hearts truly worship, reputation or His presence. Michal teaches us that love without humility turns cold, and worship without surrender becomes empty. But for those who learn from her, those who choose humility over pride, faith over offense, God still opens windows of grace. And that is where her story ends. Not with noise or glory, but with a quiet lesson that still echoes through time. Guard your heart. Keep it soft, because pride can close the door to blessings you were meant to receive. Thank you for watching. God bless you.